Imagine living in a repressive country where the authorities take all the citizens' rights. But we live in a world where civilians know their rights. We live in a world where civil disorder, commonly referred to as civil unrest, occurs. Civil unrest is a condition in which civil rights are being taken away, leading to protests where civilians descend towards authorities to obtain their rights back as a form of humanity. Usually, civil unrest is an event in which the participants become hostile towards authorities. The authorities tend to face difficulties when maintaining public safety and order due to disobedience of crowds, riots, demonstrations, uprisings, strikes. Civil unrest is one of the key components of domestic unrest. The notion claims that civil unrest limits the scope of society's activity, as well as their basic rights, such as freedom of expression, human rights, and basic needs. Thus, this results in citizens revolting and protesting against the government. This case depicts how the government has failed as a democratic or humanitarian institution. In order to better understand these situations, one must conduct an in-depth assessment on the revolt's origins and impacts. It is crucial to observe both the short and long-term causes and effects on the idea of civil unrest. This can be done by analyzing key factors and events. The government is usually at the top of a country's hierarchy in terms of authority. It is their duty to maintain stability and control over the people. However, most of the time, civil unrest happens when a crowd is unsatisfied with the main components of social activity, such as the economy, culture, and political or civic system and rights. They then orchestrated these acts of disobedience so that government officials can pay attention to their demands. Moreover, a domestic example can be taken from the May 1998 riots. These riots happened in Jakarta as a mass movement with a mission to take down President Suharto's Orde Baru. Though it has been referred to as a glorious act of reformation, incidents of mass violence, demonstrations, and disturbance of racial nature across Indonesia, which portray the crisis that is civil unrest. The riots occurred in 3 different locations within different days. Each was caused by the realization of economic problems such as food shortages and mass unemployment within the whole country. As civil unrest plagued the nation, the rights of the protesters and civilians highlight the rights and power that they possess. This eventually led to the resignation of President Suharto and his government. An international example can be taken from a numerous amount of anti-government protests called the Arab Spring. This is a world-renowned crisis surrounding civil unrest. Its effects are still seen today through the Yemen and Syrian crisis. Towards the end of 2010, there were anti-government protests, uprisings, and armed rebellions which spread across the Middle East. However, it mainly started in the spring of 2011 across the countries of Morocco, Syria, Libya, Egypt, and Bahrain, which led to the name of the Arab Spring, a year of revolution. The notion claims that a revolution happens in the case of changing a country's economic, social, and political system, which becomes the aim of civil unrest, including reformation. In this context, there were a series of pro-democracy uprisings by Muslims. The anarchic action of international organizations and governments were raising their concern. Freedom of speech and corruption played a large factor in most of the Arab Spring events. Majority of the protesters were demanding the creation of more participatory and representative political systems, a fair economic system, and an independent judiciary. Human rights violation, unemployment, and political instability are common during hard times like these. Thus, to a certain extent, it can be said that civil unrest was caused by the dissatisfaction of civilians upon the government that's ruling the nation, resulting in the disturbance of social activity. In contrary, civil unrest can be depicted as a positive thing from society's point of view, as it is a fight to regain and attain their basic human rights. It is humanity fighting back.